Welcome to Cinema Snarks. I'm Larry,
And I'm Ren.
and we are going to tell you how we really feel. And welcome to our premiere of this new film podcast. Ren and I here, just two friends looking to talk about a medium we both love,
Mhm.
film.
With
Though
it,
we have some strong opinions.
we do. And that's why we thought people might like to hear them. I will say, so right from the very beginning, you get a little bit of a variation between Larry and I. Obviously, we are two differently gendered individuals, but also our backgrounds are very different. I am an old school film lover. I am also a deep theater geek to my core. Whereas Larry is more of the modern film world and has a really strong grasp of everything cinematic. I like to think we both have a good handle on it, but our preferences and opinions tend to vary along those lines of our personal backgrounds.
Yeah, we both dabble and have a decent enough knowledge of the other side, but we definitely have expertise in other areas, if you will. And that kind of led us to our premiere being about In the Heights, because we've been going back and forth about this podcast, about getting it going, and we've had several ideas on what we wanted our first episode to be.
Mm-hmm.
But Ren, with her love and passion when it comes to the stage and stage musicals, particularly, and the Latin X factor of In the Heights and what it represents, and me being part of that community, it felt like a good kickoff point to start our podcast off speaking about In the Heights and furthermore, discussing the movie musical adaptations of the modern era.
And we'll explain like how we've separated out some films from the others, but I think we should just launch right into the heights in the heights.
In.
I got excited because we're gonna talk about Into the Woods, and they're very different.
Very different.
Musically, aesthetically, story wise, opinion wise.
You know.
So what we should start with In the Heights, which we already discovered we have a little bit of a diverging opinion on.
So you'll find that a lot. We're gonna have a lot of diverging opinions on films as we move through this podcast. Particularly, again, on particularly modern films, I feel like we really diverge on those. Classic cinema, sometimes it's hard to really get away. I don't know, because it has this weird veil over them. Sometimes, unless we start talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, then we have very different opinions. But
which is the most boring film I've ever seen in my entire life.
But we're not here to talk about boring space movies right now. We're here to talk about musicals.
Yes, maybe that'll be another episode where we go through the classic films that we either hate or do not hate. But yes, classic movie musicals. Let's start there.
Yeah, so In the Heights is directed by John M. Chu, and it is an adaptation from the Lin-Manuel Miranda stage musical by the same name. The musical that kind of put Lin-Manuel Miranda on the map, kind of gave him the clout, the resources to go on to make a bigger musical a few years down the line, known as Hamilton. You might have heard of it. And this film adaptation also had the creative input of Lin-Manuel Miranda, who also helped work on reworking the music to fit the new medium. But it follows a young bodega owner as he has dreams and aspirations to reopen his father's bar back in the Dominican Republic, where his family is from, when his community is shaken up when a lottery ticket is sold that ends up winning from their little bodega. So, Ren, why don't you start us off on your thoughts on In the Heights?
I thought it was okay. I think that's the big kind of diverging thing between us is that I think Larry really, really loved it, and I thought it was only okay. Now, there were definitely aspects of it that I thought were outstanding, were super good, and I really thoroughly enjoyed. But I think at my core, my issues with In the Heights had to do with the fact that I was actually talking to a friend about this, but from a theater standpoint, story should be at the center of any good piece of theater, at any show. And I don't feel like the story is there for this particular movie. I just, it's theoretically a story, but it's not something that I could really attach myself to or really be invested in. The stakes never felt very high for me. So that was just kind of my feeling on it. I thought I understand their dreams are little dreams, but they seemed like really little, like really like inconsequentially little. And it was I mean, so the one girl, so let's talk about like the plot line. I mean, I think it's a fairly decent like dream to be like, I want to go back to the Dominican Republic, I want to reopen this store. Like that's a lot, like opening up a business in a foreign country, going back to the land of your birth. That's kind of a big deal. Whereas the love interest of our main character, Vanessa, is like, her dream is to live further away in the city, which to me is like, okay, she's gonna move like a few blocks away. And I don't know, like, I just feel like the problem of it, which was like, oh, you need a cosigner, your credit score is not good enough, is like, it just didn't feel like that real of a, like, it seems like she had enough income to live there, if that was the issue, and it was like a credit score issue. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. I'm a person who's had a pretty bad credit score for a good portion of my life. Like, that's never stood in my way of like getting my dreams and making them happen. So just like didn't feel like the stakes were very high on that. And then you have Nina. I believe she's the one that she got into Stanford. She got into Stanford already. She's already surmounted
for a year
the incredibly difficult aspect of this problem, which is getting into a crazy Ivy League school that's all the way on the other side of the country. And like, it seems like her conflict has more to do with her just not feeling comfortable at Stanford and not having a community to back her, which is an understandable thing that I can totally understand. But then there's also like this part of me that's like a strong, empowered woman that's like, you're gonna let one asshole like derail your entire life? Like, I have trouble sympathizing with that. I feel like if you're gonna be this like badass chick that came from New York City, like I know lots of people from New York City. I don't know one person from New York City that has like a problem with a single asshole. Like I that's just not the vibe of that city. And so yeah, I think I just like didn't quite.
She didn't feel that she came home and felt guilt watching her dad selling away his like business.
Yes, absolutely. I get the guilt aspect of it. Like, I understand. I thought that was one of the more interesting, like, character development sort of things that you don't see as much, is this idea that she's not just carrying her father's dreams on her shoulders. It's the entire neighborhood has placed their dreams and their goals and their idea of themselves as having this potential to succeed on her shoulders. And that, I think, is a really effective,
more interesting than the conflict itself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that is more interesting. And I don't think they focus on that as much. She has like that one song she's doing, but even that wasn't even like the best song in the movie, and even wasn't like the best song in terms of like being visually interesting or anything. So it was kind of hard. Like, I theoretically, and I understand that was a really interesting moment, but then like it doesn't stick out in my brain when I think about it afterwards as something that made me feel very strongly during the movie itself. So yeah, I also think so. Right, so we're talking about like, so her dad sells the whole business. And like, I get that guilt, but he's already sold like half of the business.
Yeah.
And again, like, where I feel like there's no stakes. Like, I feel like even, and maybe this is just like, maybe I'm just lame and I need like an old fashioned storyline to follow properly. But like, the stakes I feel like would have been higher if they had spent more time actually dealing with this. We can't afford to send you to Stanford anymore.
Yeah, because her dad pretty much just like, we'll make it happen. The money will be here.
Yeah,
and she's like, no, I don't want it to be here.
And I think that was another like unique thing that I really liked in this film, was that he just full on was like, he never questioned for a moment selling his own business, because he, in his mind, it was his job to make her life better than his was, to put her on a path that could make her life be even better than his. And that I understand a lot. Like, this is my family is Italian, so we're a different kind of immigrant family, but like, that's absolutely just a sentiment, is that you want to give your children a better life than you had. Like, if there
a lot of Mediterranean cultures have a lot of familial similarities to Latino cultures. that family aspect, I think, runs pretty similar in a lot of those cultures. American, not so.
No.
They don't play that. They don't play that family business.
Yeah.
You're 18, you gotta go. You go do it yourself. I got here. You go do your thing now.
Yeah. And I think another thing, like, speaking of that family thing, that I really liked about this movie is the way that they made family it's not a blood family thing, right? Like, let me tell you, the Italians are like, they're pretty like, my family is my family, and it's like the blood relatives. Those are the ones, like, they'll always be nice to the people that are not their blood relatives, but there's definitely like, oh, they're very much more attached to it. But but in the Heights, it seemed very much about a community, and the family was very much outside of just this, literally blood bonded people. You have all these scenes at Abuela's house, and it's all the people from the neighborhood hanging out. Everybody calls her Abuela. She's the grandmother of the entire neighborhood, which is a sentiment and like a character relationship thing I don't think is explored as much in our stories. This idea of family that is not.
That is definitely a relatable thing, because growing up, it was like my dad's friends basically were like my titos and titas. They were my uncles and aunts. So it wasn't until I got older that I realized, I literally have no relation to these people that I've just known my entire life and have been calling like.
That's interesting. That Italians have a similar honorific, but we just attach that to anybody who's still blood related, right? So it's like my cousin, my like second or third cousin one's group. Like, you don't have to be that closely tied to us by blood for us to like make you a part of the family. But like, I think I can identify with that, but I think that it's clearly, it seems to be like, especially like that specific neighborhood and that kind of, that economic world, and that just the combination of cultures. I think what's also kind of interesting and does a good job there, and we can talk about the kind of problematic aspect of it that has got the Twitter world ablaze, which is that there's this big number in the middle where they are talking about how the neighborhood is just comprised of people from all over Latin America. It's not just Dominican Republic or Puerto Rican. It's all kinds of people from these Spanish-speaking countries, which is lovely and beautiful. And I think that European people do not have that same sort of like love of all the. Where we seem to get very like, oh, I'm Norwegian, I'm Italian, I'm Irish, right? You kind of get a little bit more focused on it. Yeah. And that's not to say that I have not met people who are like, I am Cuban. How dare you call me anything else? Like, I've met those people as well, but
we're gonna get a little racy right here. I think once you start going south, where your mother lives in Florida, the Cuban population particularly seems to distance themselves quite passionately, particularly against Mexicans, but
Yes.
against lots of other
Yeah.
Latin American countries.
Yeah.
I think New York is a little bit more blended. Maybe that's because it's the New York culture is to
Yeah.
just blend, is to be that melting pot of the
Mhm.
United States. And Florida, not so much known for that. They dominate in numbers there, like, you know, it's the panhandle closest to their country of origin. So
Mhm.
that's where they go. I don't know. But yeah, I think in New York, it's much more of, yes,
Yeah.
we are all family and under one culture.
Yeah. Yeah. So these were aspects of it that I really liked in terms of like the plot and the storyline. But I just didn't feel like there was enough there for me to really like. There's also no villain. I'm pretty sure the villain in the movie was a heat wave, a blackout and a heat wave combined. That
You
seemed to
people
be the
and your
like.
weird villain fixation. I don't understand. The villain is like colonialism, it's gentrification, it's white
But
privilege and supremacy,
sure,
all of
theoretically,
that.
but they don't even spend that much time on it. Like all of you have like I mean they very specifically were like the only people who are like close to villains in this are going to be the two white people you see on the screen at any point in time. You got the lady who tells Vanessa that she can't approve her application without a proper credit score, and this
uh,
dry cleaner dude
Cleaners
who's like
charging them outrageous amounts for little napkins.
yes, who also doesn't have any lines. He's got like two lines. I don't know who's playing this guy. I have never seen him before in my life. He seemed like a random white dude that they pulled off the set and were like, you're gonna say these lines now. And so like yeah, like I just don't feel anything about this guy. Like I don't right, if we want to make like gentrification is the like monster, it's really not very big and dealt with very much in this story.
It's the reason that the salon is getting pushed out. So those salon ladies are all picking up and moving somewhere else because she can't. She's getting pushed out of the neighborhood. So like all of their little business things are getting pushed out in the way they do. Typically, it's not all at once. Just slowly but surely, you start looking around and they're like, oh, all of the businesses owned by the people who live here are gone. That's fun. Yay.
Yeah, and you know, there's we live in Denver, so we could talk about gentrification and the problems and the positives. Like in some ways, gentrification is great because if there's people in this area that own the land and the buildings that they are operating, gentrification is good for them. It brings up the value of their businesses, but it can also be a problem when you know then all of a sudden pricing just changes and you can't necessarily afford things the same way. It's a very intensely complicated topic that two movie nerds are not going to sit here and break apart right now.
But I think you all should know, other than apparently needing a villain in her films, Ren is more fervently than maybe anybody I know, somebody who does need some plot. Those indie films, those little films that just kind of go on experience and you just live in this atmosphere for 2 hours are not her jam.
2 hours is too long to live in an atmosphere. Are you kidding me? I need something to follow and care about. And like that's not entirely true. I like some things that are just like vibes, right? I will if there is like sick dialogue, I don't care if the plot is lame. If I can like enjoy the snappiness of two characters, like and it's just a character journey, I can dig on that. But like again, this movie, you have so many main characters. Like theoretically, Usnavi is the main character, but also it seems like Nina's a main character, and Vanessa's a main character, and Abuela's a main character, and like you just don't spend enough time with one character for me to like see much of a growth. And it really doesn't seem like anybody in this movie grows very much. I mean, they change. There's just not like a tremendous amount of growth enough for me to like, you know, follow character development instead as my like train track. Apparently I need a train track to follow on a movie. And
I knew going in that Ren thought about like that there wasn't enough plot in here. And that was kind of my my rationalization for it, not really rationalization, but my explanation is just that I do think there are too many main storylines, so that it just is so much that we don't focus in on any one too much. And I think that could be a problem, though the musical fans all already mad at how much Nina and Benny were sidelined in the film. They had several of their songs cut out, more than any of the other characters. Some of their stuff was also replaced with Usnavi and Vanessa instead of Benny and Nina. So those musical fans, if we had started cutting out even more, I think they would have been real mad.
Well, I imagine that was their attempt to make it more movie friendly, to, you know, be like, okay, listen, we know there's too many plot lines here. There's too many character relationships. Y'all can't follow it. So I can understand them trying to like change it that way. But I mean, the thing is, no matter what you do, people who have an idea of what this was supposed to be, who are attached to the original form of it, no matter what, you're going to get some people that are upset about it. I think, honestly, like 80% of musical theater nerds are displeased with the film version that comes out. I rarely hear from other theater people excitement about the quality of a musical adaptation. I think I'm trying to think of like any of them that I've actually seen to had somebody
I will
be like,
say most of it has been pretty positive from the fans of this show particularly. They're just like, oh, I'm just disappointed that Benny and Nina got sidelined, but overall I liked it. So I think mostly people are okay with this one. The past ones, which we're going to speak about here shortly, have not had a great track record. So I can understand, because I think even people just going in and watching the film are like, I'm not sure about that.
So I think one of the key things here with why In the Heights is a so I to full disclosure, I was only vaguely familiar with In the Heights. Like it came out when I was in college, and I knew that it existed, and we kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of how innovative it was for its inclusion of people of color. I actually didn't realize that it had this hip hop rap musical aspect to it. Like I didn't draw the line to In the Heights and Hamilton until long after Hamilton. And Larry, I know you had like speculated that maybe I didn't like In the Heights as much because I loved Hamilton so much and I saw it first and I was disappointed. And the reality is, I will also tell you, on top of being a theater nerd, I am a big Revolutionary War nerd. So there is no way any theater musical of any kind is going to impact me the way that Hamilton did, because I was just delighted on multiple levels. But also, like, if we want to talk about it, Hamilton has a better story. Like, you follow one character, you watch his growth. Sure. Yes, and it's an interesting story from beginning to end. So it just resonates better with my own way of absorbing media.
So did you have a favorite song in The Heights?
Oh, what did I love? So there's a little part of me that really loves lin-manuel with his little
the little Piragua song.
It's just so cute and light and fun, and I cannot.
That was his whole purpose. His whole purpose was gentrification. That was his whole character's entire point of being there.
And so the other thing is, like, I don't think that Lin-Manuel, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is an amazing human being. I have stronger opinions about, I don't think he should necessarily be singing in every single thing that he does. I don't think he is a like top of the line singer, but I think he is an incredible creator. I think he is doing amazing things. And I think that if he wants to be the star in his amazing show he wrote, more power to him. Well, I'm not going to judge that.
A funny story that I had read was actually he wasn't going to be in this. And they were going to cut the Piragua Man and the songs. They were just going to cut it from the whole film.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you can't. Why would you do that? And they were like, here's the deal. If you sing the Piragua song and you're him, we'll keep it in. Otherwise, we're going to cut it. So he was like, yes, it needs to be in the movie. So I'll do it.
Yeah. So I like the Piragua, and I find him to be such an adorable, sweet like, he just oozes warmth and generosity and kindness, and just like see him on the screen and I'm like, what a adorable, sweet man. We need more of him in the world. So I think there was like that. I was like a little bit attached to it from that perspective. And then so it was interesting. My husband came to see the movie with us, and he was not as into the music when he watched the movie because he had trouble. He doesn't do a very good job of like listening to lyrics. So he has a hard time following a story if too much of it is told through the lyrics. So he kind of came out feeling like a little bit like, I don't know what that was. And then the next day I heard him just like listening to the soundtrack like all day. And he's like, this is a great soundtrack. Like, so he needed it divorced from his need to follow the plot in order to actually appreciate the music of it. So the music is very good. But I think my favorite would be, and of course I didn't do a very good job of like researching it, the one where they're in the pool. I liked that number a lot. Yes, 96,000. I like a big splashy number, and it was like literally splashy. Yeah, I like that one a lot. Also, we were talking about this has turned into a whole thing with me and my husband because it's that 96,000, right? Yeah. And a friend of ours, I was like, "Why 96,000 seems like a really specific number?" And one of the friends who came to see the movie with us was like, "Well, you can't really retire on 96,000." And they say it in the song itself. And I looked at my husband, who is a big finance nerd, like watches it on YouTube constantly, and was like, "Well, if you invest it properly, you might be able to make that something you can talk." So he went on this whole thing, Larry. He went on this whole thing about how if you invest that $96,000, you could have 1.4 million by the time you retire. If you're like, presumably safe.
Thank God I wasn't standing near you all at all in the slightest when this discussion happened.
So that was, I think I'm a little attached to that for several different reasons. But okay, so then that brings me to another thing that I like don't quite understand. The need for money was another thing that didn't quite like translate. I don't know why. It's like, okay, yeah, clearly this guy has to sell his business in order to send his daughter to Stanford. But also it's like, it didn't seem like that big a deal for him. It seemed like money didn't seem like a huge concern for him. And then there's like one line in that song where Usnavi mentions that he needs half of that just to save himself from financial ruin.
Yeah.
Which is like, they don't talk about that at all the rest of the movie. Like, the bodega seems like it's doing fine. It's clearly doing well enough.
But he saved enough to leave.
Yeah.
He was able to put the money down to get his dad's bar back.
So again, like, it's just like, I don't know what the conflict is, right? Like, are you struggling financially? Because then that's something I can like understand and follow. And then that's like a conflict we can move through with. But he says it once. And then it's fine. It doesn't seem to be an issue. He's got enough money to, save his money and move away and open a new shop. And presumably,
96,000 is what a fan favorite. It's a lot of people's favorite song from the musical. So you're definitely not alone there. Right. And I think the film version, of course, people are going to have their preference on the actual song itself, but that's one of those instances. And I think actually In the Heights does a much better job of this than a lot of recent musical adaptations. They utilized their new medium. They said, okay, we're going to keep the same atmosphere of what this song is all about, but it's time to put it into scenarios we can't do on the stage, that we would never be able to accomplish in a stage. So this big pool number where we're like sweeping over the top of them and they're doing this choreography in the pool. I mean, the building thing, the like side of the building.
The window.
The window. They're
he's looking through the window and you just see the dancers in the reflection.
So amazing. That shot from just like a filmmaking standpoint is so amazing and like so technical for such a small, and it represents a lot. I mean, the symbolism, the technicality, that shot is amazing. So they do so much in this movie to be like, this is a film adaptation. We're going to take full advantage of the new medium rather than just let it exist here.
Yeah, I think this is easily the best. So as a theater person, I love theater that takes full advantage of the fact that it's theater, that it's like live and it's happening right there. Simultaneously, I love that they made a film adaptation of a Broadway musical and took full advantage of the fact that it was a film instead. And I think this is this is probably the best. We'll talk about some of the others. This is hands down the best for taking advantage of the film medium and like taking it to nth degree. I think that the directing was fantastic. I thought the dancing was fantastic. On a technical level, this was a fantastic film. The only complaint I really have is like the storyline. Everything else
And
is fantastic.
Singing, because in recent years we've had a lot of problems with them hiring actors who talk sing
which we can get to
or try. I'm wearing a if
These
you're
were
listening to this,
amazing
I'm
vocalists.
wearing a Disney shirt, but even these Disney musicals, we're getting like Emma Watson in here who, bless her heart, she tries, but whew,
That's the thing that I'll
they hired a singer, like people who could sing or rap. And I think even Anthony Ramos does a good job at both, because you know he at least is on Lin-Manuel's Miranda's, who originated the role of Uznavi. I believe Anthony Ramos also played Uznavi on a stage version later down the road. Obviously, Olga Mercedes, who plays the Abuela, she originated the role of Abuela on the Broadway show as well. So they have a lot of Broadway people here already who are like singers. Leslie Grace, who plays Nina, is like a Latina singer. She makes a lot of Latin music already too. So that's what I appreciated them for.
Yeah, the technical skill of every single performer was top notch. The dancing was top notch. And that would, I mean, we can start moving into the films that I do not like that are from this modern era, because I think the biggest sin that most of them commit is they hire actors instead of singers. And as a theater person, my complaint has always been that I know people who have been working at their singing skills and their dancing skills for their entire career, decades of just making their voice a finely tuned magical instrument. And then you get these people who are like actors who can sing, theoretically can sing, that are auto-tuned, and it's just so deeply disappointing and upsetting, especially when it's movies that demand a high caliber of vocal skill. So let's start with my own personal favorite. If we want to make me the villain here, I hate Anna Kendrick as a singer so much. Now, what's interesting about this is that I read this later. She actually was in the original Les Mis on Broadway. She played Cosette. She's played Little Cosette. She played the little girl. Okay. Now, I imagine that Anna Kendrick as a little girl singing in a little girl voice was probably adorable. As an adult, she does not have the musical chops to be the person we hire for every single musical film. She just doesn't. She's a cute person. She's not a bad actress. She's funny. I enjoy her in a lot of other contexts. But if I get a twinge of anger, I think somebody identified it. It is my nerd rage that comes out every time I see her cast in a role she is not qualified to be singing in. So Into the Woods, she should not have been cast as Cinderella. There's multiple reasons why she shouldn't have been Cinderella, but I think mainly it's that she just isn't vocally outstanding enough.
I have to say, the one person I generally give a little bit of a pass to, since we're speaking of Into the Woods, is Queen Meryl Streep.
Absolutely.
Because she sings well enough. She's not Bernadette Peters, but she delivers what she needs to. But she has such a skill that so many of these other actors don't in how she acts through her singing. So like Into the Woods, we're speaking on it. She's not able to blow the roof off like Bernadette Peters does during that number, but she just acts through it so well that you were like feeling what her character is telling you, and it's a whole moment in and of itself. And that's what Meryl is so good at. And most actors are not Meryl Streep. I know people like to say overrated now, and since she's won 3 Oscars, people get the blowback on Meryl, but it's a simple fact. She is one of the best of all time. And she's in Mamma Mia as well, another one that we would talk about in the second one as well. But she's one of the only ones, because a lot of other people now, James Corden, oh my god.
I don't know where
here's
James
my
Corden
rage.
came from.
Why Why is he the de facto musical person now? Why?
I don't know.
Cats, Prom, Into the Woods. Like every time we're doing musicals, we're like, get James Corden because he did car karaoke on his talk show. What? What?
And I think he was cast as the baker before he had a show. So I genuinely don't know why he was cast or how. Like the baker is the main character, basically. You have the baker and the baker's wife. Like I did Into the Woods when I was in high school, and like those were the roles to get. The baker and the baker's wife. Those were like the two things you wanted to do, or the witch. I remember not the witch. It was just a great role. So it was baffling to me that they cast James Corden. I was like, who is this guy? He's like a Broadway singer. Like I think visually I can dig on him as like that character. Like I don't think he's supposed to be. I think he's supposed to be uniquely different from Prince Charming, who is Chris Pine. And
let me just tell you, Chris Pine
can take me into the woods anytime.
Let me tell you, Chris Pine and his little musical number kills it in that movie. I'm just going to say that now.
Hands down. Okay, so that is my favorite number in Into the Woods. It is potentially one of my favorite numbers just in like all of musical theater because it's so good and it's so funny and it's so like, it's so unexpected. So you can get away with not being an outstanding vocalist if you are doing something humorous or if you're doing something like, you're acting the shit out of whatever you're singing. I was not interested in Anna Kendrick also, and I love this is going to be mean. I think Anna Kendrick is a cute human. She is not gorgeous, and I feel like Cinderella needs to be mind-bogglingly gorgeous. That's supposed to be the whole thing, right? She's got to be so gorgeous that even when she's covered in cinders and dirt, her stepsisters and her stepmother still fear her because she could take over the world with her beauty. And we can talk about all the problematic aspects of this on another date.
I mean, they have a problem with this in live action fairy tales, not from Disney specifically, because even when we get like Snow White and the Huntsman, it's like Kristen Stewart. Yeah. And we're supposed to believe Charlize Theron is like intimidated by Kristen Stewart's breathtaking beauty, and you're like, girl, you got nothing to worry about. You're still the most beautiful woman on planet Earth. Like,
I would be the first person to say that a woman's worth should not be tied to her physical beauty. However, I'm also going to be another person to say that if it's relevant to the plot,
if it's literally
then it needs to be relevant. Yes, and that's the problem with these fairy tales. If you're going to redo a fairy tale, that's going to be a problematic aspect that you're just going to have to address, and you can't just ignore it, right? It can't just pretend like. Like Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively in A Simple Favor, like there's another, like, I don't understand why these two women are being like put up as like equally attractive. Like again, Anna Kendrick is an adorable human being.
And then
very
when you
cute,
style Blake like they did in that movie and you make her like unearthly gorgeous in the styling, it's like, well, Henry, I think your choice has been made for you. Your wife, the one you've been with.
So generally, so we want to start talking about. So like we brought up Into the Woods. Generally, I would say that Into the Woods suffered from like a lot of miscasting. It's also like, so it's Stephen Sondheim, which if we want to get like nerdy about it, Stephen Sondheim is very difficult music. His shows are also very long and very weird. Like another Stephen Sondheim most people have seen, which we'll talk about here, is Sweeney Todd. So it's another movie that musical adaptation from the same creator, and the music is really hard. It's very difficult. It's really complex melodies and harmonies and everything. And I just think that it was a mistake from the very beginning not to cast Into the Woods with people that were singers first of all. I don't think something like right. So these movie musicals, they're made because they have a built-in fan base. Yeah. So you don't need to cast Anna Kendrick to get people to go see Into the Woods. You can cast. You can cast a Broadway star and people are going to be even more excited about it. The audience that you are trying to pull in. I mean, I guess theoretically, maybe their thought process is like, we have those theater people. They're going to come no matter what. Now we need a big name star to get the non-theater people. But I mean, I think that trend is changing.
Horribly missed the boat because I think everyone would have been there if we actually got Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth for the Wicked movie that has been in production hell for like over a decade at this point.
Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth are way too old for those roles now. Yes. I do not care. Please put them in there. Use all that digital technology you have, that de-aging. If we can make Michael Douglas look 40 years younger, we can absolutely make Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth look like 20 years younger.
Kristen Chenoweth still sounds like she could be like 10 years old when she speaks. So
yeah, and this is my big musical theater flex. I saw Wicked in previews, like before it even came out, and so I saw Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth like in the original iteration. So there's just not like never in my mind will anyone else be close or reasonable enough.
So I have a question for you, musical nerd. Speaking of one of these adaptations, what went wrong with Rent then? Because they did bring a lot of the cast.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to move back to
film.
So here's the thing. Yes, I love the fact that they pulled in almost the entire cast. I think the only person that wasn't is not Maureen. Maureen's girlfriend. Oh my God. Let me look it up real quick. I'm going to punch myself. Right. Maureen is the Idina Menzel character, but I think the only one, Rosario Dawson, who plays Mimi, was not in the original one. And who else? It was Joanne, is the girlfriend of Maureen. She was not in the original one either. Okay. But other than that, they pulled in, like, you know, Anthony Rapp is like a big deal. Adam Pascal is like a big deal on Broadway. Same with Idina Menzel. And so, of course. And actually, strangely enough, Taye Diggs actually does a lot on Broadway. You'd be surprised for a person who can make it that much in film.
In film,
also kills it on Broadway. He was Fiyero, and he was like the second one of the following Fiyeros. Anyways, so what went wrong with Rent? First of all, Rent is boring. Listen, Rent is based on this opera called La Vie Bohème, which is the most boring opera I've ever been to. And let me tell you, I hate opera. I think it is a very, very boring medium, and they don't do very much to make it any more relevant to our modern audiences. And I've had many people tell me that if I would just sit down and really like study opera and understand all of opera, that I would like it better. And yes, I'm sure I would. But as a person that just goes to opera, I am bored out of my mind. So that is the problem with Rent. Rent is boring. It is too long, and if you don't have the energy and the excitement of the live performance and everything that's happening live, it just like nobody cares. It's like, yeah, great, everybody's dying of AIDS.
I think that one song is really like caught on, the Minutes song.
Yes, 525,000.
So that song itself, I think, broke into the mainstream through the film.
Yeah. I think that one is just like, it's just that one's, so Seasons of Love is just an amazing song. Yeah, it's just a beautiful, amazing song. And the other thing with Rent was, I think Rent came out too late, because when the original musical came out, it was at like, you know, it was right after the height of the AIDS crisis. So I remember when I was in college, maybe it was high school, but we were kind of talking about how like Rent was the musical of that generation, of the previous generation, like Gen X. That was their musical. That was like the big thing. That was a zeitgeist, and it like captured so much of that era, right? It was very grunge, and like it's all like, you know, you got your little rock star dude, and so I think it was just really relevant at the time that it came out. But then when Rent came out, which was like 2006 or something like that, AIDS is just not. AIDS was still kind of a crisis, but like, I mean, the medical advances are so much more advanced now that it's just not as dire a problem as it was at that point in time. So it just like, it lacks the relevance that it did when it initially came out. So I think that was part of the problem as well. I think it's that it is not a film that it's not a show that translates well to film, because nothing really happens. That is, it's They can't pay the rent.
Well,
everybody has AIDS. And, yeah.
But one that did take off, obviously, both commercially and critically awards wise, is the film that we kind of used as our kickoff to this modern era of musical adaptations, and that is Best Picture winner, Chicago.
Yes. And Chicago is the touchstone that we're using for our modern idea of what it should be. So one of the requirements was that it had to come after Chicago. And also we kind of knocked a couple out there. So if there's any theater nerds that are like, oh, why didn't you talk about the producers or Hairspray? So we knocked producers and Hairspray out of there because they're a little bit different because they started as movies, then turned into musicals, then were made into movie musicals. So the translation there is not as much of a jump.
Which I personally love the new Hairspray movie. I thought it was really fun.
Oh, yeah. I do too. I love the original Hairspray movie too. But irrelevant. I also love producers. It's hilarious. I love the original movie. I love the musical. And the movie musical is fantastic. Matt Broderick and Nathan Lane were the ones on Broadway that made it brought it to life. If I could watch Nathan Lane all the time, I'd be a happy camper.
Yes, he's
fabulous.
But how do you feel about Chicago?
Chicago.
Oscar, the only one of these who actually broke through and won that Academy Award for Best Picture.
Yeah, and I think, so the nice thing about Chicago is I feel like Chicago really kind of brought the movie musical back. There had been like a big lull between like the 70s and 60s and 70s musicals. Like there was Jesus Christ Superstar and Annie and like all these things that came out and Rocky Horror sort of in like the 70s. And like there's just a big lull in like the 80s and 90s where it just had kind of completely fallen out of favor. And then Chicago came along and people were like, oh, right. Musicals are fun. And I think I loved Chicago all the way around. I don't think I was super aware of it before the movie came out, and it really kicked off my young love for musicals. I think as a theater person, I kind of it was basic, right? I was like, I like Disney musicals and I really liked The Wizard of Oz, and I would do whatever play we were doing at school. But Chicago kicked off my interest in actually finding musicals that I liked and then listening to musicals.
So complete disclaimer, both Ren and I had huge childhood crushes on Catherine Zeta-Jones, which I'm not saying was the reason we love Chicago, but I'm not also saying it isn't what sparked us to maybe want to give it a try in the first place as children. Oh, look at this beautiful woman who is, I've seen her in Zorro and all these other things, and I love her.
Larry and I both had kind of feelings around Mask of Zorro when the Antonio Banderas cuts off her little outfit. It was like, oh,
it was like a childhood epiphany moment of like, wait, what's happening right now? But
yes, and as that was probably my first stirrings of I'm interested in women. No. But yeah, so Catherine Zeta-Jones, I had a huge crush on, and she's a perfect Velma Kelly. I think she kills it as Velma Kelly. I think Queen Latifah is the penultimate Mama Morton. I think actually Renee Zellweger, she is not great all the time, but I think she does a really good job with Roxy. I've seen Roxy. I saw Chicago on Broadway once. And I think they did a pretty decent job of taking the Broadway Chicago that was really popular at that point and kind of translating it over to film. So the caveat with the Broadway version was it was super minimal. It was just chairs and people in lingerie and black outfits. And so it was all about the performances. It was about the dancing. It was about the characterization. And then I saw the movie first. And I think that the movie had some of those aspects, but it really leaned into the fact it was a movie, right? Yeah. So those fantasy sections that Roxy has were amazing and glamorous. I think they did a great job of a lot of sometimes people object to musicals because they don't like the sudden bursting into song. Yes. That is weird for them. But I think Chicago did some really unique stuff where they made every song not a sudden burst into song. It was a fantasy number. It was moved into this otherworldly realm where you could kind of understand, okay, now they're doing the song and dance thing. Okay, great. And you got to appreciate all the dancing and everything. Also, I thought Richard Gere did a really good job of learning how to tap dance. I thought that was very cute and sweet. I think he was a good Billy Flynn. I think there's been a lot of legendary Billy Flynns. I think the casting on that movie was really, really great. I don't think that you need Roxy Hart to have an amazing voice. Her range is not huge, so it's okay. The thing with Chicago is the music actually is pretty simple. It's not, you don't need
those big singers.
You do not need those. I can sing every single song from Chicago, and that is saying something because my range is not huge. Also, Mr. Cellophane, John C. Reilly, that was probably my first encounter with John C. Reilly in any sort of like a real acting context, and he's just so good. Mr. Cellophane, it would be, it can be, it's like a heartbreaking little number when he does it. Chicago's amazing.
We're going from one of the best casted to maybe the worst casted, even though it did win an Oscar for acting for Best Supporting Actress. Let's talk a little bit about Les Mis and this casting choices that were made here.
So I actually don't necessarily object to the casting choices that much. So here's the thing, and this is what people probably don't know. I'm pretty sure that Hugh Jackman would love to just do musicals all the time.
He's okay. I'm okay with him. I'm thinking more along the lines of Russell Crowe, Eddie Redmayne, even like a lot of these little these little people running around. I'm like,
the casting wasn't great. It was okay. The major problem is that, so Les Mis was a depressing movie.
Yes.
It was a sad movie. Lots of people die and they convey the whole thing. Then they made a musical about it. And then this musical is beautiful. The music is amazing. And it brings a whole new level of understanding to this very complicated, very moving story of these people at this particular point in time struggling and trying to figure out what is right and what is good and how to be a good person. And, it answers these beautiful questions. But then when you make a movie where you ignore the beautiful music part of Les Mis, it's really hard to care. Or to feel like any of the actors has done a very good job. I think most of Les Mis as a musical is built into the music. It's mostly music. And so when you have an idiot director who does this idiot thing where he decides, I'm just going to let the actors talk sing, so then they're not impeded by the music. Are you kidding me? Anybody who has ever sung, ever, knows you're not supposed to be impeded by the music. You're supposed to use the music. The music guides you so that you hit the right notes and you're moving at the right pace. And like, it's actually a very complicated skill to be able to fit a riff into an improvised riff into the space that you have to actually do that. And Les Mis, I don't know why we're going to move into this. I don't know why that guy thought he could direct a musical. What other stuff has he directed? I know we kind of talked about it a little bit.
I believe The King's Speech.
Yes, that's what it was. He did the King's Speech, and they were like, "Yeah, have a musical." Yeah. And like, I think maybe the logic there was, well, he did a period piece and it won an Oscar. Let's give him another period piece that won lots of Tonys and see if he can't win an Oscar.
Another one.
Yeah, and so he just like this is kind of like that same line of like, if you're gonna do a musical, hire singers and dancers that know what they're doing. And if you're going to do a musical, hire a director that knows how to direct a musical.
Because he had them like singing live and using the live vocal takes.
Yes, and then he had the band figure out how to play the music underneath these vocal takes, which is insane.
Which is now this is mine. I played pitch in high school. You know, because you have your conductor. You are able to adjust a little bit if the singer goes off or something happens. You have to be ready, but you are not supposed to completely change the rhythm and just be like, as the singer just is talking around. No, that's insane. And that is a horrible, horrible way to try to produce music at all.
Okay. And then I think this should absolutely bring us into, so this I can say, I thought the performances were like fine. Most of the singers were not
Anne
very
Hathaway
good.
won her Oscar.
Hugh Jackman, I love his little love for musicals. I think it's adorable. I saw him in a Broadway show where he was like the star, like way before anybody realized that was all he wanted to do. When he was Wolverine, he got like a run on Broadway of doing this show called The Boy from Oz, where he was this like, he was the like second husband of Liza. It was about the second husband of Liza Minnelli. So it was the most flamboyant character I've ever seen a Hugh Jackman, and you could see the joy emanating from him the whole time. He loved it, and I don't even necessarily think that he is like an amazing top-notch singer, but the joy translates enough for me to be like, okay, great, whatever. But
that brings us to Hooper and his second endeavor into adapting a musical.
His great crime against both film and musical history.
Yes, and I guess that will lead us to both. I first want to pose the question: why, since he's so famous and he puts on these shows that just go on and never die on Broadway, and is one of the most famous to normies for sure playwrights out there, why is Andrew Lloyd Webber so difficult to adapt to film, apparently? Because both of them have been one was less than stellar, one was downright terrible.
So I'm gonna reach back to something else I was saying before. Same deal with Rent. Andrew Lloyd Webber makes shows that are good as pieces of theater. They are not as good as pieces of film. And if you are not able to add and subtract to what he's doing in a way that makes it a more suitable piece of the story and everything for film, then you're going to have a harder time. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is also, I think that like, I don't know, I just think that sometimes people just do a bad job. Like Phantom of the Opera, they just did like not a good job. It was like
wasted Patrick Wilson, who is actually a wonderful singer, mind you, just wasted him. Having Gerard Butler, who
Google Patrick Wilson doing the national anthem.
Yeah,
and you'll know. Oh, he can actually sing.
Gerard Butler is a terrible singer and should have never been cast as the Phantom.
Yeah.
Emma Rossum, she's good. I thought she had a beautiful voice, so I was fine with her. But it was Gerard Butler, the title character of your film, cannot sing like at all.
So that at its core is a problem. Also, again, like Phantom of the Opera is just better live. Like it's a show that's set at the opera. It's like it's one of the original like immersive shows, right? To a point, right? Like you have the chandelier that falls into the audience, right? That was like, oh my god, the huge at the time. And like it's you would have the Phantom would be up in the box that was like in the theater, right? So like it felt more exciting when you were there watching the show live because it was like you were a part of everything that was happening. When it starts moving into a film, it's like, I don't feel as connected to what's happening, and it's just not exciting, and music is okay.
I think the dramaticism definitely works better on stage because it's a very dramatic play. Like the music is dramatic, the acting is big and dramatic, and it just works better there. Where it's a little bit ridiculous when it gets to a film. But then Hooper outdid himself with Les Mis and outdid Phantom of the Opera when it comes to not great Lloyd Webber adaptations.
So real quick, I do have to say Jesus Christ Superstar is actually a very good interpretation of his films or of his. I was like, I think there is one that is actually good. Jesus Christ Superstar is actually very good.
Yes.
But it does not fit into this particular round because we are not. Jesus Christ Superstar came out in like 1973, so it doesn't count.
But
that's when generally people knew how to make musicals and just
they were already in it. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
but no. Yeah, they started. It started with Phantom of the Opera. Okay, so
and now we have Cats.
Okay,
the biggest abomination to modern day movie musicals, the worst of all of these, I would say, easily. And one of the worst films, certainly, of the, what was it, 2019 that it came out, and possibly that entire decade.
Yeah. So first of all, it has to be said that when Larry was there when I heard that they were turning Cats into a movie, and I laughed nonstop for hours, just hours of remembering it and laughing, because Cats is the absolute worst choice of all the musicals in the world to turn into a film. It is nonsense. It's nonsense already. It was there's a like I've watched like a making of the Cats like before the movie was made, because if you grew up at any point between like 1980 when it came out, I want to say 1980 something when it came out, and like 2002 or 3, it was on Broadway like that entire time. And it was huge, and everybody knew what Cats was. So I had seen Cats. I was very familiar with it. It was one of the first live shows that I saw, and it is nonsense. So when he was like, trying to get it produced, somebody had been like, so what is it about? Is it about like the reunification of Germany, or like what's the meaning? And Andrew Lloyd Webber was like, it's about cats. It's just about cats. It's based on a book of poems about cats. It was like nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's just like cats that show up and are like, I am this thing. I am this thing. And they aren't strung together very well. The plot is very loose, right? Like
very.
I think I remember, I was like, I'm pretty sure there's just like a cat, and then she goes, the other cats hate her, and then all the cats want to go to like cat heaven, and then at the end she's like rewarded by going to cat heaven. And I think I explained this out loud to my husband, and he was like horrified. I'm sorry, she's rewarded with death? Yes. Yeah.
That's what they're all like. They're doing this big talent show, apparently in the movie at least, to die.
They want to be that cat. So Cats the musical is already just like a weird musical, but Cats as a live show has a lot going for it. And one of the things that even Andrew Lloyd Webber understood from the very beginning was that Cats was going to be focused on dance, and it was not as much about the music and the story and whatnot. That he kind of put Cats together knowing that it was going to be a dance show. And it was also a vehicle for memory. He had like written memory separately, and then he created Cats and was like, okay, I'm going to put this memory song in here.
He created it and was like, this is amazing. This will be a masterpiece. I need to get it out to the world somehow.
Memory is a masterpiece. It's been sung by, Barbra Streisand and Bernadette Peters and every single amazing vocalist of the last like 50 years has sung Memory at some point. And it is a beautiful song. And I was absolutely devastated that Jennifer Hudson's version of Memory was cut off so many times by this stupid movie.
That's what I'm saying. If you watch Jennifer Hudson, she did like a live performance of it somewhere. And it's so good. Obviously, she kills it vocally. And she even emotes so well. And then you get to the film. Yeah.
Speaking of, we could also bring up real quick Dreamgirls, which is part of this modern movie musicals. Dreamgirls is another masterpiece, highly approved, because they hired amazing vocalists from top to bottom. And I think if you haven't seen Dreamgirls, you absolutely should. And Jennifer Hudson is allowed to be not a Broadway star and show up and just kill it.
Yeah.
Right. That the Effie song, You're Gonna Love Me, is like legendary, and her belt of it is so good. So Jennifer Hudson is an artist. She should have
that should have been the show. I mean, they released her version before the film. They tried to like promote her as like, oh yeah, you come for this to the movie. But then you get to the film and it's so undercut. The emotion of it is just sliced by this new character.
And then here's the thing too. Memory is the through line for the whole show. So if they added this character, this Victoria cat, which just it's terrible. She's supposed to be like, I guess she's supposed to be like the fill-in for the audience, but like you don't need that. Also, Cats is stupid as a movie inherently. There was no amount of you bringing me in as an audience member that was going to make me understand. But like, the character also like totally undercuts it, because the whole thing is supposed to be that this is and I listened to a breakdown of it. We're gonna figure out how to put like in the notes someplace a link to this amazing breakdown of the music of it. But what the one of the biggest problems with Cats is that they broke up the music horribly. So the whole thing is supposed to be that, you know, in musicals you start with an I want song, right? Yes. So you think about Moana and she's talking about, I want to go out onto the ocean. You think about Ariel and she's like, I want to be a part of your world. You think about
I want out of this provisional
exactly town. So there is always an I want song, and in Cats there are no I want songs. They are all I am, and then and we are attached to the I want song. It sets up a story for us as an audience to follow. So I am from all these cats. And then Grisabella shows up and she sings a memory, which is an I want song and is possibly the greatest I want song that has ever been written. And you suddenly care about one character on this stage, one cat on this stage, and it like creates a whole. There's very, very minimal plot to begin with, but it gives you something to follow. And they just undercut it. Like they hide Grisabella the whole time. There's somebody talking about how like they touch Grisabella and there's supposed to be a whole thing where she's shunned. Like if you watch the actual musical, there's a filmed version of the musical from 1998 that like you can see like they made a specific choice that like the cats all touch each other if they're part of the tribe, and then if they're not, they are not allowed to touch. Like just
very sexual. Like, that film was very sexual.
Oh my god. Okay. That also like Cats is already like kind of weird and sexual, but it was also like always a family show, right? It was supposed to be geared toward families. And the thing with Cats that made it really, really popular on Broadway and run for forever was that it was a show that you could watch with your whole family without understanding English. It was just like, so the international tourists in New York City could go and see Cats. They could enjoy a Broadway show, and it didn't matter if they didn't speak everything, because rum tum tugger is not a real word anyways. Yeah, no. Jellicle, not a real word. But like, wait, I lost my train of thought. I'm so upset about
they just hypersexualize these cats.
Oh yes, the
in the
hypersexualization is weird. So the hypersexualization is weird. But then you know what I find really upsetting is that they took Mr. Mistopheles, which go ahead again, YouTube Mr. Mistopheles from the 1998 version where they filmed the film. That is the gayest cat that has ever existed in the world of gay cats. He is literally sparkles and rainbows, and he is a gay cat, and he has a gay thing going with one of the other cats, and you can see it very clearly. And they made him a heterosexual love interest for their made-up character. And that is outrageous. It's outrageous that they tried to create like a plot, which was nonsense. Like
with this whole like kidnapping business with Idris Elba. Turning Idris Elba into this horrifying naked cat thing was a sin.
They took one plot line, one thing that happens at the end of Cats, which is old Deuteronomy gets like, oh, he's vanished. And then Mr. Mistopheles immediately brings him back. It's just this weird thing that happens in the play. And they try to turn it into like a whole, that's the crux of our
my gosh.
conflict.
The whole movie is so terrifying. Rebel Wilson eating these little like mice and roaches who have faces and who are like little human hybrids was horrifying. And then her unzipping her fur to like unveil a costume underneath was also horrifying.
So beyond the fact that none of the music is any good in this show, and they basically ripped apart a like decently well-known and decently performing popular musical and like basically turned it into a big steaming pile of crap, it's just the fact that like you are so physically uncomfortable the whole time you're watching it. I think I just sat there like tears in my eyes, not like absolutely, like it was just, Like all of my bodily functions are like, why is this happening? What's going on in this? I don't understand. Why do they have hands? Why don't they have cat noses or whiskers? Why do they have human faces?
No.
They have tails, but why they also have boobs? Some of them have boobs. Not all of them have. I don't know. Also,
look, there's
big?
Judi Dench's married, her wedding ring on her finger. That's fun.
And the size scale for the cats kept changing, which is like the audience just has no frame of reference to
and then Judi
understand
Dench with
what
that weird monologue, straight to the camera, straight to the audience to end the movie.
I know.
It was so weird. I mean, they
Why is
kept
this
kind of
happening?
looking at the camera every now and then, but then she just delivers a monologue straight to us, and you're like, I feel like you're about to suck out my soul, cat Judi Dench. I don't know what's happening. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yeah, Cats is absolutely horrifying. It is a
horrible.
travesty. I find it hilarious that it was made into a movie. I am glad, because I love being right, that it was exactly as ridiculous as I knew it was as soon as they announced it was happening. There's
And then
no way.
Taylor Swift with her song that she wrote with Andrew Lloyd Webber. Oh gosh, but yes,
I'm like upset for Andrew Lloyd Webber that he like was forced to stoop to that level. Like, I mean,
I just
T Swift, I like T Swift. I enjoy her music, but like those are not two songwriters on the same caliber or level.
No.
I would be like, I'm offended for Andrew Lloyd Webber that he was essentially forced to write a new crap song for his crap character. I mean, like, good for Andrew Lloyd Webber. I'm sure he got bank off of this thing he has made his millions off of one more time. But also,
at what cost, Webber? At what cost? Well, we're going to have plenty of more musicals this year, both adaptations of stage as well as remakes of film. West Side Story, directed by Steven Spielberg, set to release this year. Dear Evan Hansen, also, we got that trailer set to release. Lin-Manuel Miranda is making his directorial debut with Tick, Tick, Boom, starring Andrew Garfield, which is a musical. So
I don't know how I feel about Andrew Garfield in that role, but Tick, Tick, Boom is fun.
Yeah, so particularly, I think Cats should have been animated, honestly. I think it would have worked so much better. We've talked about it. People are more willing to accept musicals in animated form. Disney figured this out early and has made bank ever since. It's been a consistent winner in their circle. Animated musicals, kids latch on to these songs, they're able to identify, and then adults too. I mean, it's hard. Let It Go, we all make fun of it, but it was the phenom it was for a reason, because no one could get it out of their head.
Also, because they hired a Broadway level amazing singer to do the song. They learned from their mistake of putting Idina Menzel in Enchanted and not having her sing at all, and
that's what they've been doing really well too, at least in the Disney ones. The Ali Cravajo, who played Moana, had a beautiful voice. She's not a Broadway star, but she has a beautiful big voice. They're hiring good singers to do this. Anika Noni Rose recently for Princess and the Frog, all of them amazing singers. And so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, how we do this moving forward, and if the rest of this year's musicals at least live up to what In the Heights has set, or
In the Heights has surpassed the bar.
Yeah, it's definitely like Chicago In the Heights are in almost a different league to pretty much all the rest of the films we talked about today. Like, I mean, especially getting down to the Cats of the world, our most recent abomination of a musical adaptation.
We didn't even touch on what were the other ones we were going to talk. We were going to do Mamma Mia and
which everyone loves.
Todd. Yeah,
everyone loves Mamma Mia. I love Sweeney Todd. I think a lot of people love Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, we mentioned Oscars. So Sweeney Todd, it was not a bad movie musical. So Sweeney Todd is probably one of the last films that actually had Tim Burton's like good talent attached to it.
It's before he started parodying himself. It was like true, authentic Tim Burton rather than, you know, Miss Peregrine, where he's trying to recapture Tim Burton and failing miserably. Yeah.
And so my only complaint about Sweeney Todd was, like I was saying, is that Stephen Sondheim musicals have these amazing vocal melodies. And a big part of Sweeney Todd is the chorus in the back. And they do these crazy things. Like there's one woman in the chorus who always hits this crazy high note that sounds like the whistle that is like repeatedly used in the music in the song. It's like every time he murders someone, there's like this whistle. And they don't do anything with the chorus really at all in the movie, so they really just focused on like the main characters. And Helena Bonham Carter is an amazing Mrs. Lovett. It's a decent in the role. Yeah, it's a decent representation.
It's fun.
It's fine.
I think it's just fun because you get a horror musical in general, like this murderous horror musical.
Sweeney Todd is already like a weird show. Yeah. If you like weird, you'll like Stephen Sondheim musicals because they're always like strange, right? Like,
I don't love Mamma Mia, but everybody else adores it. So
you have to just like have enough joy in your heart that to just appreciate ABBA as a thing. I think I have a lot of weird things about ABBA, or sorry, Mamma Mia. I was another one that like the plot just was nonsense, and the like, it was fine. I mean, Meryl Streep was fine. I loved Christine Baranski having an opportunity to be awesome. I don't know if Amanda Seyfried is another one who's like, oh, she's not very good.
Yeah, people just love it, and they love Pierce Brosnan, who cannot sing to save his life either. Oh God, especially he got a little bit better in the second one when they asked him to sing a little bit, but whoo, it's rough in that first one when Pierce Brosnan sings.
Yeah.
But some of these, no. And that's the problem, I think, with Disney remaking their movies right now. So they're adaptations of their own films, but they're really struggling to find singers to do this. And we talked about Emma Watson, but she's not the only one. They are not getting singers, and they've set themselves up. These are iconic songs that do require big vocals in them. These women are very talented who voiced the princesses and these characters from way back. And they're struggling to get actors who could adequately sing these big iconic songs, and they're coming up short pretty much every time. So, but then again, Disney's the only one who can seem to sell a musical to audiences. Otherwise, they perform okay, but audiences, they don't come out like they did in the 40s for musicals any longer. Unless
it's just a different world.
Disney is there, and then, nostalgia kicks in, and everybody our age is forcing their children into the theater to see it, whether they want to or not, because it's our childhood.
Yeah, I think just reaching back to that like Chicago thing, I think what helped that kind of capture the zeitgeist of that particular time was that it really felt very different from a musical, like a movie musicals that we were used to growing up with. And it also just felt different as a film. There was just a lot of things about it that made it feel unique and exciting in and of itself. Whereas like a lot of the musicals that are coming out now, they're not different, they're not unique. Like lots of people loved Les Mis, but like Les Mis didn't do anything that the stage version didn't do, and it was and had worse singers. And so I think if we want another Chicago, somebody's got to bust forth with their kick-ass brand new interpretation of a piece of theater in a way that is innovative and takes advantage of the fact that it's film plus the fact that it's got amazing music and amazing singers. Like if you can put all those things together, honestly, you don't even necessarily put all those things together if the music is easy enough.
There you go, exactly. You don't have to be Idina Menzel if the music is Chicago's music, so there you go.
Exactly.
Well, this was it. This was our discussion on In the Heights, and furthermore, the state of the modern day musical adaptations. Do you agree with us? What is your favorite from Chicago through present day? We definitely want to hear that.
Please feel free to be upset about whichever ones we didn't mention at any point.
Feel free about that as well. But also, we're still working out all this podcasty stuff. This is our first one. I do a YouTube page, but I've never done a podcast and getting this onto all the outlets. So make sure that you are following us at Cinema Snarks on YouTube and Instagram so that you can see where it's going to be posted, and you'll have that direct link moving forward if things start to change as we start to learn the process and get it up on all the platforms you're supposed to as a good podcaster. Come along for the ride and learn with us. We're trying.
Figure out how to do a podcast.
But if you want to see our beautiful faces, we'll also be posting up the video formats of each of our podcasts up on my YouTube channel, LC Screen Talk, which will have a link somewhere in the description someplace. Again, still working all that out. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as well at LC Screen Talk. Ren, where can everyone follow you personally on the
Instagram
internet?
is probably your best bet. I'm off and on the Facebook train, mostly off, and I am too old for Twitter, apparently. I just don't understand it. So you can follow me on Twitter. You're not going to get much out of it, but I am Ren Manley on Twitter, and I am RennyPoo13 on Instagram.
Perfect. Well, follow us on all of these platforms, and we look forward to getting snarky with you on our next show. Bye.
Bye.